Hey everybody, it's Shaman Sister Sin, and we are doing a 30-minute live Q&A here on the Wisdom app. I'm not super familiar with this, but it looks like there's a button you can push to join into the conversation. So if you would like to ask a question, then you go ahead and push that and you can ask. Excuse me. Before we jump all into that, I just wanted to say, I have wanted to do live content for a while, but every platform I ever used, I didn't really like it that much. A lot of them required me to focus on that while I'm answering questions, while I'm talking, or there were, I needed two people and different things like that. So I'm hoping this is going to be one that we can use going forward, and we'll be able to do live content a lot more often. But one of the things I wanted to talk about today is that, one of the questions I get asked probably more than anything is people want to know if their loved one is a narcissist. And a lot of times, the reason why people want to know if their loved one is a narcissist is because they feel that if they can figure that out, if they can decipher that or where on the spectrum they are and different things like that, they can decide if the relationship is worth trying to fix it or not, or trying to stay in it or not. But, if someone is abusing and mistreating you, it doesn't matter what they are. It doesn't matter what label you can put on their behavior, or if they have a personality disorder or anything like that. Excuse me. The standard should not be that you will tolerate abuse and mistreatment from people just as long as they don't have an incurable personality disorder, right? The standard needs to be that you don't accept it from anybody ever. There are definitely reasons that it's necessary to understand narcissism and whether you've been dealing with a narcissist, but this is not one of them, right? So now some people feel like they can't walk away unless they know that it's totally hopeless, which is fine. Whatever it takes, right? Whatever works to get you out of the situation. But this mindset still needs to be addressed at some point, because it shouldn't need to be that extreme before you feel okay about walking away. And it looks like, I apologize, I have my assistant here with me. Does this mean that somebody wants to ask a question? Okay. So what do I do? Push it? Okay. Okay, so I apologize. And push this, and then they can talk. Alrighty. Oh, okay, it's counting down for the guests. This is really cool. Hi, am I speaking with Abeni? Abeni, I don't want to pronounce
Albany,
your name wrong.
yeah, Albany. Thank you so much for taking my call. I've been listening to you uh, for about a year. I think I've played almost every single video you put on YouTube.
Oh, man, I'm so glad to help.
Thank you. So I had a quick question that I kind of wanted to run by you.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a long-term friendship with a person that I found out was a narcissist,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, basically what happened was I lost my mother and my grandmother last year
Oh, I'm
in a
so
7 day
sorry.
period, and so
Oh, no.
it was a really tumultuous time. It was very depressing. And,
Mm-hmm.
because of that conflict and because I wasn't able to give this person what she was looking for, it essentially ended the friendship. And
Right.
so, I felt that was the best thing to do, to just kind of distance
Mm-hmm.
myself.
Yep.
And the problem that I'm having is I have another long-term friend um, who just has a tendency to overtalk me. I mean, I could be on the phone with him for like 20 minutes before he even asks, how you're doing. And
Right.
so eventually I told him, I said, listen, I can't talk to you because I'm going through a lot right now, and I can't be on the phone, listening to somebody who's not even asking me how I'm doing or has no interest in what I'm talking about. And
Right.
he
Like you're saying, you
apologized.
just don't have any space for that right now.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I explained to him, why. And he said that in the past he felt that he had a problem with narcissism, but he feels
Mm-hmm.
as though he's not a narcissist anymore. And
Oh,
I
okay.
see no change in his behavior. It's to the point where I've just stopped communicating because I'm not sure really what to do.
Right. And so what is your specific question, or do you just want my thoughts on that, or I want to make sure that I answer you specifically?
How would you handle a person like that? Because he hasn't shown any other narcissistic qualities, but
Hmm.
he's very overbearing, and I'm not sure really what the
Right.
best thing to do would be.
Well, I think that part of the reason why you may or may not have seen other narcissistic qualities could be also because of the nature of your relationship. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Sometimes you don't see those, some of the behaviors won't show up depending on what the relationship is. But I think that kind of the way you're doing it, I think that's the right thing to do, which is kind of set your boundaries and say, hey, listen, I don't have space for this right now. And I understand, how you feel and your feelings are important to me. But, I've had a lot of things going on with me right now. And I just really, I'm going to have to take a step back from this relationship. It sounds like that's basically what you did. Is that what you have kind of done?
Yeah, that's what I had to do. I mean, the first time, and after a month, I spoke to him and told him that I felt that he wasn't listening to me. And so then he apologized and we reconnected. And within a week, it was back to the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, and
yeah.
unfortunately, that's really, really common. So, because you know how it is. I mean, people will remember, oh, okay, somebody so and so doesn't want me to do this and that, but also our true natures take over. And
Yeah.
so, I think the way that you're handling it sounds right. Because remember, boundaries are about you; they're not about the other person. So, the problem here is that you are needing, more room for yourself right now, and you don't have any space for that at this time. So
Yeah.
I think that's the perfect way to do it. And you just back off a little bit from the relationship. And if he gets upset or he has a problem about it, just remember that's not your responsibility. Okay, it's not your responsibility to manage his behavior, or however he feels about that is how he feels, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I really appreciate your call. Thank you so very much. May the Great Spirit bless you.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Bye bye. All right, now let's see. What do you do? I apologize to everybody. I don't know how to. I don't know how to work this. So, okay, I apologize. But yes, boundaries very, very important, and it can be difficult for people to set boundaries because this is very unfamiliar for a lot of people. Sometimes people don't even really know what boundaries are, right? Like whenever you say let's make boundaries, so what does that mean? What does it mean to create boundaries? Sometimes people don't even know. But one of the things about boundaries and any behavior that you are doing that sort of bumps up against your old conditioning is to remember that our brains are complicated in a lot of ways and complex, but the way they work in many ways is very simple. Because brains don't like things that are not familiar, and they do like things that are familiar. So, whenever you're doing these things that are unfamiliar to you, for example, creating boundaries, enforcing boundaries, advocating for yourself, the different things that some people might not be used to doing, then your brain identifies that as unfamiliar, which means that it's bad, right? This is dangerous. That's why you have that nervous system response that we often see, where people, they get really upset, they get your heart starts beating, you get nervous, you get worried, and plus some of your past conditioning has already taught you that this is going to lead to something bad. If I tell people no, if I enforce a boundary, if I advocate for myself, people are going to get upset with me, they're going to be angry at me, something bad might happen. So, excuse me, one of the things to remember is that sort of the cure for that, or the way to deal with that, is repetition, right? Time and exposure is what you need for that, because the more you can make the unfamiliar familiar, then your brain stops red flagging it as something that's like super duper dangerous. Excuse me. And so when you can do that, it will stop activating your nervous system. And so whenever that's happening too, something you can do sort of to calm yourself down and activate your parasympathetic nervous system would be what we call belly breathing, which is where you relax your belly, right? Then you breathe in down into your belly. So you want to breathe in through your nose, 2, 3, 4. Out through your mouth, 2, 3, 4. and that activates your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your sympathetic nervous system is the one that does fight and flight and freeze and fawn. It's the one that says, oh my goodness, there's an emergency. And your parasympathetic nervous system is the one that calms you down. So whenever you activate that, well, there's my dog in the background. Whenever you activate that, you will actually feel your body calm down. And that works, and it works very quickly. Another very simple relaxation technique you can do whenever you feel sort of the anxiety in the moment is close your eyes, take slow, deep breaths into your belly like we were just talking about, and with each one, picture a different food item. That sounds silly, but try it the next time you feel overwhelmed or anxious. It really does work. And some of the people on Instagram were saying that that's going to make them gain weight because it's thinking about food. So, but managing the anxiety in those moments and sitting with it and really getting through it is the way to deal with that, because, you know, we don't, just because something is a negative feeling doesn't mean that we necessarily have to avoid it or we don't have to escape it. Uncomfortable feelings, even though they're uncomfortable, are not always bad, right? It's not always a bad thing. For example, in this situation, it's not bad at all, because the uncomfortable feeling is letting you know, like, you're challenging that old conditioning, so that's not a bad thing. It's a very good thing. And there are also some simple grounding techniques you can do. For example, there are some people who, they work really high-stress jobs, or, for example, I speak with a lot of people who touch other people during the day, nurses, massage therapists, that type of situation. And some of the grounding techniques you can do, they're really, really simple, and a lot of them can be done almost anywhere. Meditation, even just for a minute. If you go in the bathroom at work and just meditate for a minute while you're by yourself. Earthing, which is going outside without your shoes on. Taking a shower or water immersion of some type. Belly breathing, like we were saying. Laughter. Take a senses inventory. Something I can see, something I can hear, something I can smell, something I can taste, something I can touch. And visiting nature and going outside. I see we have a caller waiting. Alrighty, and it's counting down. Hi, this is the Little Shaman. Am I speaking with Jennifer?
Yes. Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing well. I echo what Abney said. I've been listening to all your stuff for quite a while. I have a dad and a husband who I don't necessarily think they're narcissists, but they have narcissistic tendencies.
Yes, ma'am.
And I want to know about, shed light a little bit on double standards. What is okay for you is not okay for me.
Right. And you're saying, just for clarification, that what you're doing is wrong, but them doing it is fine.
Yeah, they do the exact same thing, except when they do it, it's okay. But when I do it, it's horrible.
And what is the reason that you're being given? Is it because their motives are better than yours, or what do they even say?
No, they don't.
Right, they just say like that's different or whatever.
But they deflect.
Yo, okay. And so, if you don't mind, just give me a little example of that. You don't have to tell me something that really happened, but just like a little one. For example, you say, "Hey, why did you interrupt me while I was talking?" When you don't like when I do that to you, and then they say,
"Yeah, let me think of something kind of recent." My husband and I are separated. I live in a rent house.
Yes, ma'am.
He recently moved in the rent house, and when I lived in our house together, I would sometimes just leave and go somewhere else because it was just horrible.
Yep.
And he would be so upset when I did that.
Mm-hmm.
But then now he leaves this house. So I kept saying, look, why is that okay for you to do, but not for me, or something like that?
Yeah, right. And I would assume that if you did get a reason, it probably wouldn't make much sense. It's really, the answer is because it's different when I do it. You know what I mean? And that's really the truth, because you know how you always hear like narcissists don't believe the rules apply to them? Sometimes, right. Yeah, and sometimes whenever you're a person who, in your mind, you know, just like with most people's minds, the rules apply to everybody. It's not like some people follow the rules and some don't. Like, everybody's supposed to follow them. So it's very difficult for us to realize that there is somebody who really thinks that that's true. But a lot of times it is, because what happens is, their reasons and their motivations and their circumstance, whatever it is it's justified that they're doing it. Your reasons are bad, essentially. I mean, you know what I mean? They're very egocentric, and they think that everything you do is to and for and because of and about them. If you remember the call that we just had, that's why I was saying, like, be specific that your boundary is about you. Because they will a lot of times believe that you're talking about, you know, it's because of them. You're trying to control them.
Well, and everything's about them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so for the double standard, it's really more of the same, unfortunately. It's just this idea that when I'm doing it, it's not wrong. And that's really, I don't like when you do it because I don't like it. But I do like it when I do it, or I want to do it, so it's not wrong. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess it's that simple. I guess I thought there was something deeper there.
Well, I mean, there is, if in terms of the pathology, for example, we, not just you, but all of us are very two-dimensional to them. And so the idea that you would have a side in this, or you have feelings also that are going to be affected by this or whatever, that's not part of the conversation. You know what I mean?
Right.
So there is a deeper reason in terms of the pathology, like what makes it up. But I think in the moment, it really seems to be very sort of simplistic, the way a child thinks about things in some ways. Like, this is what it is because I say it is. I don't like when you do it, therefore it's bad, but I think it's fine when I do it. It's not bothering me, so it's not a problem.
Yeah, and I never get an answer. Mm-mm. Ever.
No, and you know what? The answer might be that he doesn't know the answer.
Well, that's probably fair. I mean,
like,
they're both about an inch deep.
Yeah, no, it's true. And that's one of the things, too, that I tell, you know, we've discussed this on the channel many, many times, is that a lot of times people sort of see them as withholding and stuff like that. And perhaps some of them are, but I really don't think a lot of them have a whole lot to give in the first place, you know?
Not a lot of depth.
No, not at all. But I really enjoyed your call. This is going to cut you off, so no problem. Thank you very, very much. It's something I think that a lot of people have questions about is, you know, how are they able to have these mindsets? How does this compute in their minds? But, you know, it's one of those things that a friend of mine, her dad used to say, it makes sense if you don't think about it. And in a way it does. If you don't think about it and you just say, this is wrong because I don't like it, and it's right if I'm fine with it, so that makes sense if you don't think about it. It isn't fair. It's not reasonable. But if you've been in one of these relationships, then, I mean, you already know that it's not fair and it's not reasonable. Those two things are not in this type of person's vocabulary. Like, they're just not, unless it's about them. You know, narcissistic relationships are ego-based, not just for them. I mean, it's easy just to kind of talk about the narcissistic person's ego, because it's usually the most dysfunctional, most enormous, poisonous one, right? But the relationships are ego-based, meaning they exist in a cycle of ego feeding, ego starving, and ego shaming, right? You might have heard this cycle referred to as idealize, devalue, discard. The resulting sort of like addiction withdrawal, because that creates an addiction. And the ego trauma that the narcissist inflicts on other people is what makes these relationships so difficult to exit. When someone is being love bombed, that is feeding their ego, right? When that's withdrawn, whenever the narcissist stops love bombing or they disappear, you know, it depends on what's going on, that starves the ego, and it sort of triggers this need to get that back. It feels like this really big, massive loss. And then whenever they just dip out, whenever they discard the person, that's, and also, they will ghost and do all these things. Those are all ego starving. And then the devaluing, where they say nasty things or they triangulate and compare you with all these other people, all those kind of things, that's ego shaming. These are very, very powerful things. And the reason why this is happening is because narcissistic personalities, they are perhaps more so than other personalities ego focused and ego driven. And so that's all of their interaction with other people is ego manipulation, all of it. And, ego gets a bad rap, but the truth is that the ego's job is to protect you and to make sure that your needs are being met. It can be manipulated, though, and that is how narcissistic relationships function. And that's one of the reasons why it feels so much like a loss, because not even withstanding actual genuine feelings you probably have for this person, because you're a caring individual, you have empathy, you believe that you've bonded with them, there really is a genuine addiction in these relationships, and it's really, really something that does not get talked about enough. There are so many people who straight say, like, I really feel like I was in an addiction, like I went through withdrawal, or like whenever I couldn't talk to this person, whenever I couldn't see this person, that was killing me. It's not like a regular breakup, and that's part of the reason why. One of the things we often hear about is a trauma bond. There is an addiction component to the trauma bond, and it's one of the things that makes leaving the relationship so difficult. Not only is there a trauma bond, but the addiction component of the relationship makes people go through withdrawal. And it's actually, studies have shown that it's very, very similar to what happens in an opiate addiction. And some of the physical withdrawal symptoms are actually very similar. So it's not surprising at all that these relationships are very, very difficult to get out of. Excuse me. So that's something I think it's really, really not talked about enough, and that's one of the reasons why the detox is so hard. The voice of addiction is very, very sneaky, right? Like if you have, let's say there's somebody who became addicted to opiates, to pain pills specifically, because they had an accident and their back got hurt. Now they're still taking these opiates 2 years later, even though their back is fine. So what happens is when they try to stop taking the opiates, when they try to get off of it and break the addiction, a lot of times their back will start hurting, even though there's nothing wrong with their back. And there's even a phenomenon, I can't remember exactly what it's called, maybe someone can remind me, where an old injury that occurred before they ever were introduced to opiates might start hurting too. Let's say they broke their arm when they were a child falling out of a tree. That injury might also start hurting too. No one's really sure why that is, perhaps because the brain knows that pain is a signal to receive opiates. And so if we look at some of the intrusive thoughts and different urges that people have that are trying to get out of these relationships, it can be very similar. And that's just one part of it. There's also a physical component, there's a mental component, there's emotional, it's a very, very complex thing. And so that is one of the reasons, by the way, that I do the Narcissistic Abuse Recovery Clinic, which I do it twice a year. We're holding one, I don't know, is it in like 2 weeks? It's the 18th and the 19th of December, and it is 2 days. What's that? Yeah, 10 days away, and there are still some spots left for that in case anybody's interested. It's 2 days, all of it's done online, virtual. You'll get a lot of tools, a lot of, support and things. Excuse me. We also decided that for the spirit of the holiday, for the next 5 people who would sign up for it, we'll also do 5 spots for free, because there are a lot of people who need this. And so if you're struggling with sort of breaking away from this then you might want to check that out. But the most important thing is going no contact, like truly, if you can. I mean, sometimes people can't because they are, they have children with this person and they have to talk to them because they have to set up vegetation and different things like that. But if you possibly can, no contact is the most important thing for a lot of different reasons. It's not just because you don't want the narcissistic person to be able to hoover you, even though that's a huge reason. It's because that is very, very important to break that addiction. That's like if I say on Wednesday that I'm going to stop smoking cigarettes, then when I wake up on Thursday, I'm still going to want to smoke. So, you have to stay away from the substance. Stopping means stopping. Also, one of the most important reasons for no contact is that our brain tends to believe what our eyes and ears show it, even if we know that that's not true. That's how optical illusions and magic tricks work. Your brain knows that that's not possible, but it is delighted by the magic trick because it believes what it sees. So if you're trying to accept the knowledge that this person is pathological or that they are abusive, whatever's the thing, if you're trying to accept and internalize the knowledge that you need to leave this relationship, then when this person is standing in front of you, giving you conflicting information to that, when they're love bombing you, when they're being kind and nice and friendly, your brain tends to believe that. I am it sounds weird to say a fan, I guess, of former FBI profiler Robert Ressler, who helped establish the Behavioral Sciences Unit. And, one of the stories that he told was he did a lot of different interviews with serial killers. And he was visiting Edmund Kemper, and he ended up, he developed a rapport with Kemper because they had many interviews over a period of time, and he would go in there with Kemper by himself. Now, Edmund Kemper not only is a serial killer and a necrophile, but he also was 6'9" and like 300 plus pounds. I mean, this is a big guy. He didn't need a weapon to kill most people. So they were in the interview one of these times, and they went through the shift change at the prison, or there was some reason why the guard left the room. And when the corrections officer left the room, for some reason, Edmund Kemper leaned over to Robert Ressler and said, "I could kill you before he gets back here in this room." So, of course, Robert Ressler is trying to play it really cool, and he's like, "Oh, you wouldn't think they'd let me be in here without a weapon, do you?" And Kemper's like, "Well, I know that you don't have a weapon because you're not allowed to bring one in." And so, Robert Ressler's trying to kind of play it off and stuff like that, but they passed through and without incident, and the guard came back, and then whenever the interview was over, Kemper said to him, "Hey, I was just joking around, like I'm not really going to do anything to you." But Ressler said that never left his mind. And for the next however many years, like 30 more years that he interviewed serial killers and psychopaths, he never once went in there by himself again. And so that's just an example of, even in a situation like that, where he knew what this person had done, where he had evidence of it, and they were talking about it, he still was fooled by what his eyes and his ears showed him. So, if that can happen in a situation where he's not related to this person, he doesn't have any feelings for him that are personal, if that can happen in that situation, then if this is your husband or your mother or, a really good friend of yours, then you're even more vulnerable than he would have been. So that's one of the reasons why no contact is so important. Like I said, brains, they're complex in the way that they function, but also very simple. The brain believes what it's told, it believes what it's shown, it believes what it hears. And if that is at odds with the actual known facts, then more than likely that's going to be believed instead. At the very least, it will cause massive, massive confusion. So that is going to conclude our first Q&A on here. I thought it was really cool. I really like the way this app functions, and thank you very much to everyone who participated. Next time we'll probably go a little longer, and I'm going to work out a schedule for this so that we can do it more often. May the Great Spirit bless you. Have a beautiful day.